You sold your car. You emptied out your apartment back home. You packed exactly 2 suitcases and bought a one-way ticket to Incheon International Airport. You had a vision in your head, heavily curated by late-night algorithms and highly produced dramas. You pictured a sleek, sunlit studio apartment in Mapo-gu, overlooking the Han River. You imagined yourself walking down tree-lined streets in autumn, grabbing an iced Americano before heading to a creative job that would simply manifest itself because you were brave enough to make the jump. You had ambition. You had a dream. What you did not have was a backup plan. And Seoul is a city that punishes you for not having a plan. The illusion shattered on your 3rd day. You walked into a neighborhood real estate office, pulling up your translation app, confident that the $3,000 you brought with you would secure a decent place to live while you looked for work. The agent, an older man in a golf polo, offered you a paper cup of sweet Maxim instant coffee. He smiled politely as he looked at your budget. Then he explained the reality of the South Korean housing market. He wrote a number on a notepad. 10 million won. That was the standard deposit. The Wolves system. 10 million won just to be allowed to pay 600,000 won a month for a basic studio. If you did not have the 10 million up front, the doors to the city were locked. You tried to negotiate. You asked about places that required smaller deposits. He crossed out the 10 million and wrote 5 million, still entirely out of your reach. You left the office, the paper cup of cheap coffee suddenly tasting entirely bitter. You stood on the sidewalk as a stream of office workers in sharp coats hurried past you, none of them noticing the foreigner, realizing they had made a massive, catastrophic mistake. That was 2 months ago. The money drained faster than you could ever comprehend. A few nights in a cheap hotel, a few desperate meals in tourist traps in Myeongdong, a prepaid SIM card, a T-Money transit card. Every time you tapped that card at a subway turnstile, you watched your survival fund shrink. Eventually, desperation led you to the end of the Green Line. Line 2, Silom Station. You are here because it is cheap. Silom is a neighborhood built for people in waiting. It is packed with young Koreans studying for civil service exams, cramming their entire lives into tiny boxes, hoping to eventually pass a test that will elevate them into the middle class. And now, you are one of them, not studying for an exam, just fighting for a foothold in a city that does not care if you exist. You live in a Goshiwon-tae. When you first read about them online, the articles called them micro-apartments or co-living spaces. They made it sound efficient, minimalist. The reality is 3 square meters. You pay 300,000 won a month in cash to a manager who barely looked at your passport. There was no deposit. There was no contract. Just a key card and a set of rules taped to the back of your door. You are lying on your bed right now. It is 3 in the morning. If you stretch your arms out, your left hand touches the floral, peeling wallpaper, and your right hand touches the edge of the particle board desk. The desk is pushed so tightly against the bed that you have to sleep diagonally to avoid kicking your chair. Under the desk is a small, vibrating refrigerator that shakes the floorboards every time the compressor kicks on. It is the dead of winter outside. The temperatures have dropped to -10 degrees Celsius. The wind sweeping down from the mountains cuts right through modern winter coats. But inside your room, you are sweating. The building uses communal on-dole floor heating. The manager controls the thermostat for the entire floor, and to compensate for the poor insulation, he keeps it running at maximum capacity. The synthetic linoleum floor of your room is hot to the touch. The heat rises, filling the tiny, unventilated box with thick, suffocating air. You cannot open a window to let the winter air in because your room does not have a window to the outside world. To save $50,001 a month, you rented an interior room. You have a small sliding glass square above your bed, but it only looks out into the narrow fluorescent lit hallway. If you open it, you get no fresh air. You only get the smell of damp shoes and cheap laundry detergent from the hallway, and the harsh glare of the motion sensor lights whenever someone walks to the communal bathroom. So, you lie there in the dark, sweating, in the middle of January, staring at the low ceiling. You reach for your phone. The screen lights up, blinding you for a second. You open your banking app. You stare at the balance, $142,001. That is all that separates you from the streets of Seoul. $142,001. Your 90-day tourist visa is ticking away. You have 30 days left. You came here hoping to find a company that would sponsor an E2 or an E7 visa. You sent out dozens of resumes from your laptop, sitting on this very bed. You applied for everything: English teaching, marketing, editing, voice acting. Most never replied. The few that did stopped communicating the moment they realized you did not already have a valid work visa. They want someone already settled. They do not want a liability. You do not have a return ticket. You thought buying a round-trip ticket meant you lacked commitment. You thought burning the boats would force you to succeed. Now, burning the boats just means you are stranded on an island, watching the tide come in. Through the paper-thin wall to your right, you hear a sound. It is a heavy, chest-deep cough. It is the man in the room next to you. You have lived here for 2 months, and you have never seen his face. You know he wakes up at 5 in the morning. You know he drags his feet when he walks. You know he listens to the news on his phone at a very low volume. And you know he has had a severe respiratory infection for the past 3 weeks. He coughs again. The vibration travels through the drywall and against your pillow. You share a wall, but you are light years apart. That is the unspoken rule of the Goshiwan. You do not speak to your neighbors. You do not acknowledge each other in the hallway. Everyone here is hiding. Hiding from debt, hiding from family expectations, hiding from failure. Acknowledging someone else means acknowledging your own miserable situation. You close your banking app. You cannot sleep. The heat is unbearable and your stomach is entirely empty. You sit up. You pull on a pair of oversized sweatpants and a faded gray hoodie. You open your door, wincing as the electronic lock registers the movement. In the silence of the hallway, any noise feels like an intrusion. You walk down the narrow corridor toward the communal kitchen at the end of the hall. The motion sensors track your progress, lighting up the cheap ceiling panels one by one. The kitchen is a small alcove with a single window covered in condensation. There is a greasy electric stove, a sink full of stray noodles, and the lifeline of the Goshiwanko, the communal food. Included in your $300,001 rent is unlimited white rice and basic kimchi. You open the massive industrial rice cooker. A cloud of steam hits your face. The rice at the bottom is slightly yellow and crusty from sitting on the warming setting for too many hours. You grab a plastic bowl from the drying rack and scoop a generous portion. You open the communal refrigerator. The smell of fermented garlic and old vegetables washes over you. You pull out the massive plastic container of kimchi. It is heavily fermented, the sour, watery kind that is cheap to buy in bulk. You sit on a cracked vinyl stool in the corner of the kitchen. You look at your bowl. Watery kimchi over yellowing rice. This is not the food you saw in the vlogs. There is no sizzling Korean BBQ. There is no fried chicken and beer by the river. There are no delicate side dishes served in beautiful ceramic bowls. This is the food of survival. This is the fuel for the invisible people of the city. You eat it mechanically. It tastes sour and dry, but it fills the ache in your stomach. You finish the bowl, wash it in the sink, and place it exactly where you found it. You look out the kitchen window. The glass is frosted with ice on the outside and dripping with moisture on the inside. You wipe a circle in the condensation with the sleeve of your hoodie. Down below, the streets of Seoul are bathed in shadows. The endless rows of neon signs, the karaoke rooms, the PC bangs, the cheap bars have finally gone dark. It is the dead hour of the city. The heat of the building suddenly makes your skin crawl. The walls feel like they are closing in. You need air. You need to prove to yourself that the world outside this 3-square-meter box actually exists. You walk back to your room. You grab your heavy winter coat, your scarf, and your wallet. You slip on your shoes in the tiny entryway and push through the heavy metal fire door that leads to the stairwell. You walk down 4 flights of concrete stairs. The air gets progressively colder with each floor. You push open the front door of the building, and the winter wind hits you like a physical force. It takes your breath away. The air is so sharp and freezing that it hurts your lungs to inhale, but it is entirely, wonderfully fresh. The suffocating heat of the ondel floor is stripped from your body in seconds. You pull your scarf up over your nose and put your hands deep inside your coat pockets. You start walking. You have no destination. The streets of Seoul at 3:30 in the morning are entirely devoid of the romance you expected from moving abroad. There are no picturesque alleyways, just uneven pavement, piles of translucent blue garbage bags waiting for morning collection, and the glowing red crosses of churches placed on the tops of concrete commercial buildings. You walk past a dark PC bang. Through the window, you see rows of glowing monitors, illuminating the pale faces of young men who have nowhere else to go, paying 1,001 an hour to escape into virtual worlds. You keep walking. You pass a small park where the exercise equipment is coated in a thick layer of frost. Your fingers are going numb inside your pockets. The cold is seeping through the soles of your shoes. You realize you cannot stay outside for long, but you dread the thought of returning to the hot, airless box. Up ahead, you see it, the glowing, welcoming beacon of the modern age, a GS25 convenience store. The bright white fluorescent light spills out onto the dark pavement. It is the only sign of life on the entire street. You walk toward it. You pull open the glass door, and a wave of warm air greets you, carrying the distinct, comforting smell of soy sauce, boiled eggs, and sweet pastry. An electronic chime announces your arrival. The store is meticulously clean. The aisles are perfectly organized. You walk toward the refrigerated section. You do not need anything. You have very little money left. But you need a reason to be here. You need a reason to stand in the light. You look at the triangular kimbap, tuna mayo, spicy pork, spam, and egg. They are 1,200 each. Too expensive right now. You look at the ready-made lunch boxes. 4,500 Out of the question. Your eyes settle on the bottom shelf. The classic, stout plastic bottles of banana-flavored milk. 1,500 You can afford 1,500 It is an irresponsible purchase, considering your bank balance, but you need to buy something to justify your existence in this space. You grab the cold plastic bottle. You walk to the counter. Standing behind the register is a woman, an ajuma, in her late 50s, wearing the blue GS-25 uniform vest over a thick, puffy sweater. She looks entirely exhausted. Her posture sags, and she's staring blankly at a small television mounted in the corner, broadcasting a silent rerun of a trot music competition. She notices you approach and turns her attention to the register. You place the banana milk on the counter. You do not speak. You do not have the vocabulary to say anything meaningful. And even if you did, your throat feels entirely tight. You pull out your debit card and hand it to her. She takes the card. She scans the bottle. She inserts the card into the terminal. For 3 seconds, you wait for the machine to approve the transaction. In those 3 seconds, the anxiety spikes in your chest. What if the bank froze your account? What if the conversion rate changed and you have less than you thought? What if this tiny, pathetic purchase is the one that gets declined? The terminal prints a small receipt. The transaction went through. She hands the card back to you. As you reach out to take it, your hand brushes against hers. Her hand is incredibly warm. It is rough, worn down by years of labor, but it is warm. She looks up at you, really looks at you. She sees the heavy coat. She sees the exhaustion in your eyes. She sees the foreigner standing in a convenience store in the middle of a freezing night, buying a single bottle of milk. She does not smile, but her eyes soften. The corners of her mouth twitch slightly, an unspoken recognition of a shared difficult existence. She pushes the bottle toward you and speaks in a low, gentle voice. Mani chuoyo. It is very cold. You take the bottle. You bow your head slightly. Nay, you reply. Yes, that is the entire exchange. 2 words. You turn and walk out of the store. The cold air hits you again, but this time it does not feel as sharp. You open the bottle of banana milk and take a sip. It is artificially sweet, thick, and entirely familiar. You stand on the corner of the empty street drinking the milk, looking up at the towering apartment complexes in the distance. You do not have a backup plan. Your money is almost gone. Your visa is running out. You are living in a closet, sweating through the winter, hiding from a coughing stranger. The romanticized version of your life died the moment you learned what a 10 million deposit was. The fantasy has been entirely stripped away. You are completely unmoored, floating in a sea of 25 million people who do not know your name. And yet, standing here on the frozen pavement, holding a plastic bottle of cheap milk, you feel strangely calm. The worst has already happened. The illusion is gone. And what is left behind is brutally, terrifyingly real. You are actually here. You are actually surviving. You are no longer a tourist waiting for a cinematic moment. You are just a person breathing the freezing air, sharing a tiny sliver of humanity with an exhausted cashier at 4 a.m. There is no safety net waiting to catch you. There is only the cold street, the long walk back to your 3 square meter room, and the absolute certainty that tomorrow the sun will rise over this massive, indifferent city, and you will have to figure out how to survive all over again. And somehow, in the deepest part of your chest, that terrifies you far less than giving up and going home. That wraps it up for today. The story you just heard is fiction. But if you've ever lived alone in a foreign country, you know that the loneliest moments aren't the big rejections or the empty bank accounts. They are those quiet walks at 3 a.m. when a fleeting glance from a stranger is the only thing tethering you to the rest of humanity. If this one hit different, drop a comment and tell me which part stayed with you. I've got more stories like this coming, so hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one.